Hey everyone, what's up? Kozuro here. Matcha is a Japanese digital artist who mainly focuses on painting characters, but also can make beautiful backgrounds. She has one of my favorite art styles out of every artist I know, so I decided to study it and try to make my own piece with her style at the end. And spoilers, it's gonna be quite a challenge. I attempted many times to study Matcha's art, but couldn't succeed because I wasn't able to understand her process just by looking at her finished drawings. And for me, it was way too hard to copy her drawings without knowing the steps she is going through when she paints. Like, it literally took me 5 hours just to make this. But luckily, she recently posted on Twitter, X, a sped up video of her making an art piece, so I was finally able to cut her process in different steps, which makes it way easier. I believe her painting process is divided in 6 parts, which are the following: make a sketch, paint the local colors, create a rough lighting scenario, make an overlay layer, paint darker shadows, and finally render your drawing. But I'm gonna explain this more in depth when I'm gonna get to my first study, which is now.
Let's go!
Without further ado, I throw myself into the first step, which is to make a draft. There's really not much to say for this part here, except for the fact that you can use as many layers as you want, provided you merge them together when you're done. Here, you should focus on getting a striking composition and a cool pose for your character, depending on your tastes. You should also make sure there aren't any major anatomy issues with your character, and even add some guidelines for the hair and the clothes. This rough is going to be your common thread for the entire drawing, so you shouldn't neglect it, but don't spend too much time on it either, because
it's only the beginning.
In the beginning.
The beginning.
For my part, it wasn't a problem since I had a reference to copy and it only took 25 minutes to complete. Once I was done with the sketch, the next step was to paint the local colors on a separate layer. This segment is pretty straightforward too. Just make sure to lower the opacity of your sketch and try to have a clean outline. But it doesn't have to be perfect either, because we're going to modify it anyways in the future. The 3 things that you have to focus on are: first, that you choose colors you like and that go well together. You can have a complementary color scheme, for example. Second, you have to add subtle variations of hues to make your color scheme more interesting, but at least that's what Matcha does, and she does it really well, but it's really hard not to go absolutely nuts and destroy the harmony of your colors. So this is something you have to learn with experience, I guess. And third but not least, you have to add texture to this layer, whether it be with custom brushes you like or with a layer adjustment, but personally I prefer brushes. However, here you can say I didn't apply any texture, and this is because I wanted to see how much Matcha's art relied on texture. In fact, Matcha paints in Clip Studio Paints, and I wasn't able to find her texture brushes as Photoshop equivalents. But I found some of the original ones that are on Clip Studio, and that's why I made my second study on Clip Studio Paint. But I'll talk about that when we get to it. Next on the list was shading. In this part, you just have to create a multiply layer and paint shadows according to the lighting scenario you chose to have for your drawing. For example, in this study, the light comes from the left of the character and a little bit behind, so I just shaded the parts the light wouldn't be able to directly hit. Usually, Matcha paints shadows with a pretty cool and desaturated color, and once again makes use of a textured watercolor-like brush. Using a cold hue to shade skin might feel a bit off or weird, but as elders would say, "Oh, hard babies, just trust the process. It will get fixed in the next step anyway." After shading, Matcha creates what I believe to be an overlay layer and picks a warm, bright and saturated color to add a bit of life, especially close to the focal point and on the skin, because warm and saturated colors will usually drive the viewer's eyes towards them. Alright, on to the next step, which is to add darker shadows and refine your drawing just a little bit. Here I hid my sketch layer to refine my drawing a bit, because of course the final product won't have the draft in it, so the shapes have to be clean and clear even without line art. Then you'll see I add some darker shadows on my multiply layer, all while once again varying the hue to diverge the colors and give this pearly look to the painting.
And now welcome to the final challenge.
If you've climbed all these steps, you might think you're almost at the end of the staircase, but no, make no mistake, you've only climbed half of it, because now comes rendering. It is also the hardest and longest stage of Matcha's process, and most art processes to be honest, but despite the fact that it's the most time consuming and difficult part, it's also the most fun and interesting to me, because you have to paint over your drawing with a normal layer, so it's like seeing it slowly rebirth as a complete and beautiful piece. It's also the part in which you have the most liberties, like on which brushes you will use, for example. While you can watch me finish what represents 6 hours of work total, I'll talk about how I approach studying others' art. What do you mean I should have done that from the start? Nah, logical order doesn't matter that much, does it? Actually it does, but I'm way too lazy to modify the entire structure of my poor script, which is already kinda bancal. So, when you study someone's style, you should first be able to tell what you like in their art, and then focus only on these things when you make your study. It could be the proportions they use for their characters, the way they stylize the face, their shape language, etc. For me, what I was focusing on was Matcha's rendering style. This includes the way she paints light and shadows, hair, and most importantly, how she uses colors and values to make the whole piece look harmonious and vibrant, while still having her focal point stand out. And after applying almost everything I just said, here's the final result. And here's the original for comparison. I'm really happy of how it turned out, even though I still wasn't able to understand how she paints her character's eyes. This is a mystery to me. But you know what? No time to lose. Let's quickly talk about the second study, and we'll jump into the creation of my own original piece. For this second drawing, I wanted to try a more complex piece with a background, and in the meantime, I found that Matcha uses Clip Studio Paint and even found some of what might be her brushes. By the way, I'll put a link in the description if you want to download them. So for the first time, I motivated myself to learn Clip Studio Paint to try out Matcha's brushes in this study. And oh boy, it was tough using a software I knew nothing of. But I still managed to have a lot of fun with it, which is really what counts in art creation, I think. However, one advice I want to give is not to get lost in details when you start rendering. First focus on cleaning your drawing by using big shapes and clean your rough. Then only you can add details. Anyway, I chose not to completely finish this one because the main thing I was focusing on was catching the mood of the drawing, not training on rendering, because I thought I was good enough for now. I also noticed that certainly using Matcha's brushes makes the piece more interesting and Matcha-like, but I figured I would be able to make it as original with my own brushes, in addition to the fact that I am much more familiar with my OG Photoshop. So I took the decision to use Photoshop over Clip Studio Paint for the creation of my own drawing, and before we get to it, I'd say the most important things I would have changed if I wanted to complete this drawing would have been my shadows, which were too dark, and the face, cause... lol. Anyway, it was now time to tackle on my last challenge, making my own painting with Matcha's style.
But one thing I was unsure of was my capacity to make all the colors work together as well as Matcha does. Because of that, I had to choose a character who doesn't have a very complex design to make my fanart. So I chose a Genshin Impact character, of course, because they're known for having simple designs, right?
Simple designs.
Yeah, you know what? I changed my mind.
No, please, I don't want to.
Yeah, I chose A.
Simple design, right?
Nah, but don't worry, I'm not gonna draw her usual clothes. I'll change them a bit.
But alright, enough talking, let's go.
In the lore of Genshin, A lost a friend in the war, and since I've always drawn quote-unquote happy drawings, I wanted to make a darker one for once. So the first thing was to find a composition which both puts my character in Valor and makes us understand this is a death scene. So I made A holding onto the hands of her friend, whose soul is now returning to the sky, in a state between life and death.
This is so dark.
I chose not to draw the entire body of the second character so we can focus on A's emotion. Actually, it's because I'm way too lazy, but don't tell anyone. And when I was finally happy with my composition, I moved on to the local colors. Here, you can see I first paint a mid-gray to outline the silhouette, and then separate the background from the character to make things easier. This gray color also helps my eyes to see if my values are off, because painting on a white background can trick you into applying very bright colors. This is why a lot of digital and even traditional artists paint on a plain color instead of pure white. Everything was going well. Too well, because now what I feared actually happened. I had to paint shadows, but the colors, the values, the harmony of Matcha just wasn't there. I tried, again and again, failing to get a result that would satisfy me. I wanted to give up. Was all this work for nothing in the end? Was I not good enough? No, I couldn't let myself get beaten down by my own drawing. So I kept grinding, erasing, redrawing, destroying, until eventually I burnt out. When you draw, you're really alone with yourself. So you see, drawing isn't a fight, because you can't win a fight against yourself. No. Drawing is a research. Art is a quest. Of beauty for some, meaning for others. But you have to be patient and kind with yourself during the process. And after a 2 months break, I finally picked up my pen again, ready to conclude this chapter of my art journey. Alright everyone, thank you for watching this video till the end. It took a ton of time and effort to make, so if you enjoyed it, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. And until next time, see ya!